After I sent that one-word reply, a quiet resolve settled over me. I wasn't going to rush back into their chaos or beg for a place I was never truly wanted. No. This time, I would disappear. Completely. I looked at my phone, the same device that had just carried my father's cold verdict. With a steady hand, I powered it down. Then I shut my laptop and closed the lid firmly. No more emails. No more messages. No more constant checking. I logged out of every account, work email, social media, even the private chat groups where they all kept whispering about business and who was to blame for what. I erased myself from the digital world that had consumed me for so long. No status updates. No tweets, no LinkedIn posts, no Instagram stories pretending everything was fine. Just silence. Pure, uninterrupted silence. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding the back end together. I wasn't answering frantic calls from panicked coworkers. I wasn't fixing bugs in the middle of the night. I wasn't the invisible line keeping everything connected, even when no one said thank you. And as the hours stretched into a day, and the day into two, I felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. Relief because the constant pressure had lifted, even if only temporarily. Uncertainty because, deep down, I wondered, would they even notice? Would anyone see what happens when the quiet one vanishes? Would they feel the sudden gaps in the system? The missing safety nets? The cracks that started to show when no one was there to catch them? Or would they just carry on, acting like I was just a ghost, a footnote they could erase without consequence? I thought about Clarissa, smiling at her big interviews and presentations, thinking she was the future of the company. But what she didn't know was that without me, the company's complex systems would start unraveling. The safety protocols I put in place wouldn't hold. The digital walls I built would weaken. Would she ever realize the truth? Would anyone? As silence took over my life, I felt like a ghost in my own world. Out of sight, out of mind. But I didn't mind. This was my choice. My quiet rebellion. Because sometimes, you have to disappear to be seen. Sometimes, you have to step back so the cracks become visible to those who ignored them. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than words ever could. Yet, even in my silence, I kept watching, keeping an eye on the company, on the people who had dismissed me so easily. I didn't call. I didn't reply. But I was there, waiting. Waiting to see what would happen when the backbone they relied on was gone. Would they crumble? Or would they finally understand that I wasn't just the quiet one? I had walked away. The question now was, would they notice? Would they even notice how much they depended on me? 36 hours had passed since I vanished. No emails. No calls answered. No messages returned. And then, the storm began. My phone buzzed, lighting up the screen like an alarm. At first, just one call. Then 2. 3. The number kept climbing. 72 missed calls. Dozens of urgent texts. I sat calmly in my living room, a cup of tea in hand, watching the notifications pile up. The quiet tick of the clock was the only sound, apart from the faint buzz of my silent phone. The messages started flooding in. Systems down. Need help ASAP. Client portals crashing. We're losing data. Can't access vendor files. What's going on? They were panicking, and rightly so. Because I was the linchpin, the silent engine behind everything running smoothly. Without me, their digital fortress was crumbling. I could see the chaos unfold from a distance, like watching a slow-motion disaster. But I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just sipped my tea. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing that the very thing they ignored, the person they pushed aside, was the one holding the keys to their survival. And now, they were locked out. I thought about Clarissa, frantically typing emails, trying to put out fires she didn't understand. My brother, fumbling with the server settings, desperate for a fix he didn't have the clearance for. The calls kept coming, from frantic employees, worried clients, and confused partners. They didn't realize it yet, but the quiet one had already won this round. But then, a question lingered in my mind. What if I never answer? What if I just let it all fall apart? Would they finally see what they lost? Would they finally understand that I wasn't just a background voice in their world? Or would they keep pretending, covering up the cracks until it was too late? I took another sip of tea, letting the silence stretch out. The phone kept buzzing. 72 missed calls, no less. Each one a reminder, a little alarm bell ringing louder and louder. Yet, here I was. Still quiet. Still watching. This was my moment of power. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. But by stepping back and letting the chaos speak for itself. Because sometimes, the loudest message is silence. And sometimes, the only way to be heard is to stop being there. What if I never answer? The first signs were subtle, almost easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Financial reports didn't sync. Numbers were off. The dashboard showed outdated data, and no one knew why. Vendor access expired. Contracts were stuck in limbo, waiting for approvals that never came. Emails bounced back, returned unread, like messages lost in a ghost town. The tech they bragged about, the backbone of their business, the secret sauce everyone admired, I built it. I secured it. Every system, every firewall, every backup was my work. But now, without me, it was blind. Like a ship sailing into a storm without a compass. I sat back and watched the cracks begin to widen. The executives scrambled to make sense of the chaos, but they didn't have the keys to the kingdom. Clarissa was desperate, calling me in the early hours, begging for help she didn't deserve. But I didn't respond. Because this was their reckoning. For years, I was the silent force keeping things running, patching holes, fixing errors, saving them from disasters they didn't even realize were happening. Now, the silence was mine to keep. The clients? They noticed. A major account sent a terse email, questioning delays. Another partner's legal team requested urgent clarification. The business they thought was so solid was cracking at the foundation. And all because the person they pushed away was no longer holding it together. How long before the first one walked? Before the dominoes started to fall? The truth was clear, without me, they were lost. They had built their empire on my work but refused to acknowledge it. Now, the walls were crumbling. And the only question left was, how fast would it happen? How long until clients start walking? The cracks in the company weren't just cracks anymore, they were gaping holes. A major investor, one who had been their biggest financial pillar for years, backed out. Just like that. The news hit the boardroom like a thunderclap. Panic spread fast. Without the investor's funds, payroll failed. The accounts payable froze. Employees started calling, worried about their next paycheck. I watched it all unfold from my quiet corner. Meanwhile, my brother scrambled, desperate to regain control. He tried restarting the server, desperation clear in every move. But I'd already disabled the admin override. No quick fixes. No backdoors left open. The system they once trusted was locked tight, and I held the keys. Clarissa's emails started coming in, each one more frantic than the last. Please. Just tell us what's happening, she begged in her latest message. But I stayed silent. Because admitting they needed me was the truth they'd refused to face for too long. They'd always seen me as the quiet one, the background techie. Never the architect of their success. Never the foundation holding the whole thing up. Now, that foundation was crumbling, and they were running out of options. The board was scrambling to patch the leaks, but without me, every effort felt like trying to bail water out of a sinking ship with a teaspoon. The chaos was a storm, relentless, unforgiving, and completely out of their control. Clarissa sent another message, we can fix this, together. But I knew better. This wasn't about fixing the system. It was about fixing their arrogance. They had to learn the hard way. That sometimes, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. And sometimes, you don't admit you need someone until the roof is caving in. So I stayed quiet. Watched as they flailed. And let the storm do its work. Would they finally admit they need me? They always called me the quiet one. The girl who never raised her voice in meetings, who never pushed her ideas too hard. The invisible thread in the background. But the truth? I was the architect. Every failsafe, every logic tree, every redundancy protocol, they were all mine. I built the systems nobody saw, the code nobody questioned. I was the silent guardian of their empire. When things ran smoothly, no one noticed the hours I spent keeping the network secure. When the servers didn't crash, no one remembered who patched the bugs. And when the backups kicked in flawlessly, no one credited the quiet engineer behind the scenes. But here's what they didn't know. I didn't leave a backdoor. I was the backdoor. The one and only way in and out of their digital fortress. No secret keys hidden in a drawer. No emergency override tucked away for easy access. Because I never trusted them to have that kind of power. So when I walked away, they were locked out completely. Suddenly, the quiet one was the only one who could unlock the chaos. And yet, even now, as the company trembled on the edge, they still refused to admit what I was to them. More than a tech support person. More than just the quiet one. I was the foundation. The heartbeat. The pulse of the whole operation. But now, silence filled the halls. Phones unanswered. Emails ignored. They sent frantic messages begging for help. But the truth? I wondered if I could forgive them. If they came back, humbled and broken. If they finally realized the value they had lost. Could I? Could I look past years of being dismissed? Could I overlook the late nights they never thanked me for? Could I forget the times they blamed me for things beyond my control? Or was this silence the only answer they deserved? Would they know what to say if I gave them a chance? Would they beg for forgiveness? Or would pride keep them from admitting they needed me? That's the question now. As I watched their empire crumble, I realized something. Power isn't just about holding the keys. It's about knowing when to use them. And when to withhold them. Could I forgive them, if they begged? Within 48 hours, the company wasn't just struggling, it was bleeding. The chaos I had quietly set in motion was unstoppable now. Clients, frustrated and worried, started pulling their contracts. One after another, deals dissolved like sand slipping through fingers. Our biggest partner, the one that had been the company's rock for years, threatened legal action. Panic spread through the office like wildfire. Phone lines buzzed non-stop, but I wasn't there to answer. I had become the ghost in their system. Then came the calls. Not the usual business calls. But personal ones. My mother's voice, broken, desperate, crying. She begged, pleaded for a meeting. Please, come home. We need to talk. We need you. Her tears were raw, a sound I hadn't heard in years. The woman who once scoffed at me, who doubted my worth. Now, she was begging. But did they finally see me? Really see me? Not as the quiet one. Not just support. But the backbone they couldn't live without. I sat silently, the weight of everything sinking in. The empire they built on my work was collapsing. And I was the only one watching it fall apart. Their pride, their arrogance, it had all led here. To this moment of reckoning. And as my phone buzzed again, I wondered. Was this the moment they'd admit the truth? Or would they keep pretending I was just a replaceable part? The silence stretched long. Finally, a message from Clarissa appeared. Can we meet? Please. It's urgent. I stared at the screen. Could I trust them now? Could I forgive years of dismissal? Or was this collapse the final goodbye? Did they finally realize? I was never just support. After days of silence and chaos, I finally took action. I sat down at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard. With a deep breath, I typed a message that would shake the very core of the company they thought they could run without me. One email. To the entire board of directors. Subject line: You removed the foundation. Now watch the house fall. The words felt like thunder as I hit send. I watched the message disappear into their inboxes, one by one. The ripple began instantly. Phones started ringing. Panicked voices filled the air. But this time, I wasn't answering. Because I had already made my final move. The proprietary technology, the heart of the entire operation, was no longer theirs. I sold it. To their biggest competitor. The rival company they had always underestimated. The company I knew valued the work I had done. The company that understood true innovation. They thought cutting me off was the end of me. But I was just getting started. Watching their empire crumble from the outside was surreal. The emails flooded in, frantic and desperate. Please reconsider. We need you back. Can we negotiate? I ignored them all. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about recognition. Recognition for years of being overlooked. For being the silent architect behind their success. I wanted them to know that without me, they had nothing. The power I held wasn't just technical, it was strategic. And now, they were paying the price. My phone stayed silent. My life moved forward. New projects, new challenges, new respect. Because sometimes, the best way to win is to walk away and let the house fall. And let others build anew. I didn't want revenge. Just recognition. But since they chose exile, I chose power. They silenced me. So I left them with silence. But silence isn't empty, it echoes. And in that echo, they heard what they refused to see. You don't exile the one holding the keys unless you're ready to burn.